Do you want to see it again?
Well, that was a movie.
Hello, welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, this is Eric, and we just saw Tenet. So this is going to be spoiler-free for the first section, and then we're going to get into spoilers later, but we'll give a warning first, so don't worry about that if you don't want anything spoiled. So, we just saw Tenet, and, it was complicated.
Yes.
Definitely one of the movies that you need to see twice, I think, to get everything, but I also don't want to over-exaggerate that and say it wasn't the most complicated Nolan film I've seen either.
Yeah, I think they started to explain it pretty well. And towards the end. In the beginning, I was like, what is kind of going on?
But that's the point of the story. Yeah. I'll say, though, that there's two different types of confusing in this movie, in that there's plot-based confusion, which is deliberate, where, like you said, for a while you don't know what's happening because it's just the beginning of the plot and you're kind of just confused looking for clues the whole time. But then I will say, honestly, it was a bit sloppy with a little bit of the keying into things that were going on at the beginning, at least for me.
Yeah. I felt like two different movies almost. The beginning was like you said to me at one point, it's like, what is the point of this? And I'm like, I don't know yet. We're like 40 minutes in and it still didn't feel like anything was developing as far as the plot.
And we'll get into that more later with spoilers, but it's true. Like, I felt like there could have been a more streamlined way to say the things that were said in this movie.
Yeah.
I know that's like a complaint that a lot of people have about Nolan movies. I don't normally have that complaint.
Right.
But it definitely felt like this, particularly the pacing was a bit off, where some parts of it I was like, this is just going great. Like, I love the flow of the movie, I love the feel of the movie, I love what's happening in the movie. There were certain things about it that were the best of any Nolan movie ever.
Right.
In particular, the action sequences were above and beyond the best action sequences I've ever seen in a Nolan film.
I agree.
Amazing. Then there were other parts where I feel like he's aware that his exposition is a bit rough at times, and so he tried to speed it along, and it wasn't good. Like, we needed to spend more time on that exposition. I've never had a complaint about the exposition in the past. I know some people do. They say it's too wordy. They say it's too slow. For me, though, I understood why he was doing it and how he was doing it.
Right.
I felt like this one, he was trying to compensate for it a little bit, and so tried to speed it through, and I was just left going like, what are we saying? What are we talking about?
I felt like there was a specific someone who was just there kind of for a lot of that expedition. That's what she was there for mostly. I'm
not even like complaining about just those scenes. I'm like, so obviously you even see in the trailer, you've got the main character and you've got Robert Pattinson as like the second character, I guess, and they have a ton of conversations, and I felt like a lot of it was just really fast dialogue.
Right.
And just quickly edited too. And with the same character you were talking about before, there's multiple characters that they have exposition with, and it's okay written, but I felt like just a little too fast.
Right.
Keeping in mind this is a Nolan film, so it's not like we're not comparing this to the average film, we're comparing it to other Nolan films. So it's still not a bad movie, but I can't qualify it as a great movie, honestly. It feels more like the recent string of his movies of Interstellar and Dunkirk and this. It's not comparing, at least in my eyes, to Memento or The Prestige or The Dark Knight. We didn't get that good.
No, I don't think so at all. I was actually thinking, it's like, I don't know if, I mean, it's a Nolan film, so you go in with expectations, and I don't know that they were actually met. Maybe I just put them too high.
I feel like I made that mistake,
so I don't want to say I'm disappointed by any stretch, because it was an entertaining movie and a good movie.
That was my reaction with Dunkirk too, is I didn't have my expectations set correctly, so I came in at it the first time disappointed, and I've since boosted it up, and so that's why this is the first thoughts, because honest first thoughts, I might give this a sub 8 rating. This might be a 7.5 to me, and because as I'm watching it, I'm going like, oh, of course it's an 8.5 movie, and then I kind of question, like, if this wasn't directed by Nolan, if you didn't know this was Nolan, would you feel that way? And I said no, honestly. And so, like I said, I don't want to say it's bad. It's certainly not his worst movie, but until I've seen it again, I don't feel comfortable giving it more than a 7.5.
Yeah, it's really hard to process this movie.
Right.
Like I'm trying to go over it in my head, and like it's just, I don't know. I'm gonna have to sit on this one a while to
right, and like
to really say I liked it like that, like a normal Nolan film.
Right, and I do want to see it a second time before I pass judgment, because it is one of those movies that has a lot of moving parts, but I feel like I kind of grasped most of it the first time around, whereas like, because it does spell it out for you, like there is the whole, obviously, traveling forward and reverse, you see that all in the trailers, and I feel like they do it well enough that you get a grasp on most of it, at least the story elements. There's certain moments and scenes where you're like, what exactly is happening? But it doesn't detract from it. My complaint isn't with not understanding it that way, so I don't think watching it a second time will necessarily help with that.
Right.
So I don't want to judge it too harshly. I do want to see it a second time, but honestly, I don't know how much seeing it a second time will help my rating.
It's very comparable to when you listen to like a complex piece of music. You have to absorb it in first, because you don't know what's going on. You can't find the rhythm. There's all this stuff going on. You're distracted left and right. And I know with me, like, when I watch a good director's movie, I sometimes get distracted because I'm looking for clues and hints and Easter eggs and stuff.
That is true.
And like, I know I was doing it with this movie sometimes. I'm like, all right, they're hinting at something that I'm just missing, and then when I see it the second and third time, I'm going to catch this stuff, and it's going to blow my mind. Right. It's like when I see The Prestige, even to this day, I'm like,
you're still,
yeah. So I'm expecting that with this movie, I hope. But
that brings up a good argument against my fear for it, in that actually my biggest complaint with this movie is the pacing. Like I was saying, there's some great moments, and then there's some not awful moments, but subpar moments, and maybe that pacing will flow better when you actually have the entirety of the movie in your head already, because maybe things are going by quickly that you wished weren't, but after understanding everything, the entirety of the plot, then those things won't seem rushed anymore. Right. So maybe that will help. I don't I don't know. I hope so.
Well, that's why this is a first thoughts, because you're just sucking in and just spewing how you feel at the moment. But yeah, it's like any good piece of art, man. It's going to take time. Has to settle.
Nolan films aren't designed for a first take, hot take. Right. Like when I saw Interstellar, literally, like the lights come on, the screen goes black and goes, written, directed by Christopher Nolan. I sat there for like 5 minutes, like, what the hell did I just watch? And I didn't know what I felt about it, and I had to sit and I went, that movie was amazing, but it took me a while. Dunkirk, I saw in theaters 3-4 times, and then went, I really enjoyed this. This is my first time on this channel doing a first thoughts of Nolan, and Nolan movies aren't, designed for this kind of criticism. So it really is unfair to critique it like this, and that's why I feel like I brought up earlier to you, it's got the second lowest Metacritic rating of all of his films, not including Following, because I don't know if that really counts. But if you look at the lowest one, that's The Prestige. So that shows you right there that the more complex his movies are, the lower their rating is. So it doesn't really have much to do, because actually his highest rated on Metacritic, I believe, was Dunkirk, which nobody thinks is his best movie. Nobody thinks that. So it's just, there's a lot of people who gave it a worse rating because they don't understand it. And it's got a 60-something right now on Metacritic, and that's not fair. Because, like I said, right now my gut reaction is 7.5, and I think it has very much potential to actually go up from there. Because I feel like right now 7.5 is my basement, and I'm thinking that if I see it a second time, it might get up to an 8.
His style alone, like his movies for me started a 6 easily, like just because of his directing style and how good he is at directing. Like it starts at a 6. So if it's only at like, what'd you say, on Metacritic 60?
60 something. Yeah,
that's really low.
Yeah, and it doesn't deserve that. No. I will say though that there are definite things to criticize about the movie. I don't want to say it was perfect. It definitely wasn't his best movie. I don't care how many times I rewatch it. It's not going to be The Prestige or Memento or The Dark Knight. It's not one of those. There was different things in there that just were kind of weird. Like, I don't want to say any of the acting was bad, because none of the acting was bad, but I didn't love any of the acting either.
Yeah, again, the acting wasn't All right, you're right. It just wasn't bad, but it wasn't on par for his
Right.
movies. His part, he usually has these amazing performances out of actors, and they were all good, but nothing that made me go, that is,
Right. And nobody's ever accused Nolan of being a Scorsese, where he gets the best out of his actors,
Right.
but he's normally got the wherewithal to have elite talent actors like Christian Bale or DiCaprio or somebody like that. And, I mean, Kenneth Branagh was in this. That's the best actor you had casted in this film, and he was the best. He gave the best performance. He was easily the best actor in this movie. I mean, you could talk about Michael Caine, but he was in it for all of 5 seconds. But Kenneth Branagh was the only performance in this movie that I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. But even within his performance, there was 1 or 2 moments where I was like, didn't love that.
Yeah. Again, because you have such high standards, and when it didn't meet it.
Right.
But now, here's a little sidetrack. Now, is that our fault or his fault for setting these standards so high, or us just being unrealistic?
And I had that thought while watching it, where it reminded me of North by Northwest. Not that it's the same kind of thing, although you could make that comparison, because this almost felt James Bond-esque.
Right.
And North by Northwest is called the best James Bond movie to not have James Bond in it. But that wasn't the comparison. The comparison in my head was, I felt like that was the same kind of area in Hitchcock's career where he was living off reputation more than his actual delivery.
Right.
And I was like, oh no, is this the moment that's happening in Nolan's career? Because you know it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
And I'm like, every movie now, I'm crossing my fingers like, don't let this be the one.
Yeah.
Not that
It's too early to slip.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. I don't think this is that.
Right.
But the fact that I even asked myself that question just shows that it's not, elite Nolan or Nolan at his best. And so I'm not defending him or attacking him for it, but I do think that it is fair to say that the acting in this movie wasn't great, but I don't want to attack it either. I mean, like, I think it's fairly well known. I'm not a Robert Pattinson fan, but he wasn't awful. Right. And then neither was Washington. The funny thing is, like, once you get past those couple of actors, I didn't even recognize anybody in the cast. So there's like bit part actors and stuff, but I feel like, I don't know, like I said, Nolan's strength is the story, not character development. He's never been great at character development. And I mean, that's not a necessity to be a great director. Right. Hitchcock sucked at character development too. Name a great Hitchcock character other than from Psycho. Right, there isn't one. He never was good at developing characters, and Nolan is much in the vein of Hitchcock. And I mean, obviously he was strongly inspired by him. And so if you're not going to have great characters, you need actors to get the most out of those characters, especially if this story is the focal point. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't my favorite Nolan story either. I was watching the first scene, which the first scene really was gripping and was great. The sound was so good, the music was great, the imagery was great. I was like, I had a preemptive like tweet in mind. I'm like, I can't wait to get out of this movie and tweet just like, wow, hashtag Tenet. And then I'm sitting here like, I don't need to tweet that, because I'm not, it would be more like a, hashtag Tenet. It's not the same reaction. It's not a wow movie. It was let me think about that one for a while kind of movie, which, I mean, is good. But, there's a lot of those movies. It's not like I didn't need Nolan specifically to do it. So I enjoyed the ideas that he presented in this movie, but I felt like the plot itself didn't necessarily live up to the ideas. Right. Whereas, like, if you think about Inception, it's a great idea, but then a great plot that seamlessly flows through that idea. This one, I enjoyed the idea. You get the idea from the trailer. The trailer lets you know what the idea is. It's like traveling forward and backwards, simultaneously. The plot that goes along with this idea is fairly forgettable. Like, and if you asked me what the plot of this movie is, I couldn't give you a complete understanding of what it is right now, because I didn't completely follow everything that was happening, not because of confusion, but because of vagueness and lack of importance. Like, I felt like it just didn't feel like anything had weight to it to an extent. And here we are bashing this movie again. I love Nolan. Nolan's my favorite director.
Oh, hail Nolan. Yeah, you're right. There wasn't a weightiness to the plot. Yeah, just sitting here trying to process more of what I've seen.
Right. And we'll definitely talk more about it in spoilers, because we can go over the plot more, and maybe we'll be able to come to more of an understanding when we combine minds. That's happened before in our reviews, where we ended up liking it more or less after actually talking through spoilers. So I think we should probably end the spoiler-free section there, and just let you guys know up front, expect a 7.5 to an 8.5 movie, because that's where I'm sitting at now. Is the basement 7.5, but on a second viewing, I think it could get up to an 8 to an 8.5 movie. Also expect that you're gonna probably want to watch it a second time before you really know how you feel about it. But just do dampen the expectations a little bit. It's not Inception. It's not. It's also not a sequel to Inception, which was one of the dumbest ideas. I heard that, and I was like,
trilogy.
I was like, what the hell? Like, first of all, no, it's not the sequel, and secondly, how the hell is this movie supposed to connect Inception to Interstellar? I was like, what? It's just clickbait nonsense. Anyway, so thanks for watching, guys. Please don't hate me. I love Nolan just as much as any of you do. This movie was enjoyable. I'm going to buy it. I will buy it, and I will watch it again. I may go see it again in theaters, because what the hell else am I going to do?
I certainly have to, I got to get a taste of Sonic out of my mouth.
Yeah,
This last movie we've seen.
So, yes, I'm not hating on the film. I just want you guys to know it's not perfect. I don't know what really any other YouTube critics have said about it yet, so I don't know if I'm jumping on or against the bandwagon or anything. That's just my honest opinion, I swear to God. So, thanks for watching, guys. We're getting to spoilers right now. So, to try to explain the plot, I actually had the imagery. I don't know if you've ever seen the video, but there was a video of Nolan explaining the plot of Memento, which I don't know why anybody would need that plot explained to them, but how he explained it was he had like a hair clip. That's what this movie was, but it didn't completely double back on itself. It just, for the last like third of the movie, it doubled back, because you get to a point in the movie where he goes into a machine that makes him inverted, and so he's traveling backwards in time. And so he's reliving moments of the plot and becoming the reason for moments in the plot. And so are other characters, not just the protagonist, but all of them. And so it's not that complicated, honestly, because it's a standard time travel idea. Like, I've talked even recently about in Harry Potter 3, that's the same idea. It's like they travel back in time and they become the catalyst for a lot of these events that are happening. And so that's what this plot is, essentially, is just a hair clip plot. But the problem is that there's so many like moving pieces. So the bad guy, Kenneth Branagh, has a bomb connected to his Apple Watch. And when he dies, the bomb goes off. And so you've got this big, entertaining, but confusing action sequence where you've got people going forward in time and people going backward in time, passing each other, trying to stop the bomb, I guess. But I didn't even know where the bomb was. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what they were attempting to do. They have to make sure, though, that he doesn't die before they're done disarming the bomb. And so they've got specifically 10 minutes to do that. And then the wife, who's in charge of making sure he stays alive, kills him with 10 seconds left on the clock. So you're expecting something to happen, and then nothing does, and they say, oh, no, we got it. I'm like, but why? Because the whole point of this movie was you can't change destiny, you can't do anything to affect destiny, because everything you go back to do, you were already there doing anyway. It's the standard. They talk a lot about the grandpa paradox, because that's, you know, the only correct way to think of time travel. And so, of course, Nolan, being intelligent, used that as the groundwork for this. But if that's the case, then what happened?
They killed him before the bomb went off. Like, it didn't go.
It didn't work.
How did the world not die? Like, and also, like, it's kind of weak in general. Like that concept alone, that he was going to die, and then he decided to take the world. It wasn't enough motivation.
And that was connected directly to the part where I mentioned previously, where loved him. Well, okay, I liked Kenneth Branagh for the most part, but his weakest performance was when he was giving that what turned out to be exposition later, where he's screaming at his wife and he goes, "If I can't have you, nobody can have you." And he's doing his best. He's doing his darndest. He's like got tears in his eyes, but it was just cringy anyway. And there was like one or two moments like that from him. And like I said, the rest of the acting was forgettable. We didn't mention yet, there's a lot of humor in this movie. No, okay, not a lot of humor.
Right, yeah, true.
For Nolan, there's a lot of humor.
On his standard, yes.
And so I've brought up in the past how every time Nolan makes a movie, he makes it a point to specifically go against a criticism about him.
Right.
Sometimes multiple. And I feel like his motivation in this movie was to, one, not be boring, so he added humor and interesting characters, supposedly. Two, he wanted to show that his exposition wasn't boring, and so he sped it up so much. And that failed. The humor didn't fail, but it definitely wasn't great either. I could take it or leave it, honestly.
Right. So the opening scene, like you mentioned, I thought was fantastic. And then you go into probably half hour, 40 minutes, you would say, of just like... And then
what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, like nothing, no plot seemed to develop. And then there's one thing I missed, so maybe you can explain it to me. And I don't know...
Probably not.
Because...
if it's from that time section, probably not.
I was experiencing a problem with hearing some of the lines because it was so loud to me. I don't know, maybe it's because we haven't been to movies in so long, but it was so loud that I almost couldn't hear it because it was too loud. There were certain lines I didn't even catch. So maybe I missed something. So obviously the painting is much more of just a way to connect him to the main guy. But I didn't get any of the part. They're sitting at the dinner explaining it. I didn't get any of it. I didn't get like what the point of it was, like how it was fake and it was a copy, and I'm like, I don't understand any of this. That's the biggest thing I'm lost on, even though I felt like I got the rest of the movie for the most part.
I'm lost on that whole time frame. So it's like he is doing this thing at the beginning of the movie where he's trying to save people, and there's like it's a limited amounts of invertedness happening, but not a lot, because you see that one bullet come out, but it's not him, it's somebody else trying to shoot him.
Did they ever say who that was?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think they did.
It's probably not important, I'm just curious.
But anyway, so then he gets kidnapped by Russians, and they take out his teeth, and then he kills himself. He thinks, it turns out it was a fake thing, it was fake poison, it was a test. He passed the test, so now he's being moved over to this different area for Tenet where you go like this and you have code words, which it was cute and worked well for a couple of scenes. And then it's like from here, then it's like you go to here, and then from here you go to here, and it's like a bunch of just like him trying to piece together stuff, which is part of what made it feel like North by Northwest.
Right.
But it just, none of it, I guess the idea was he had no idea what was going on and he was picking up the pieces as he went, but I was just like, it didn't flow well. No. I didn't enjoy it. I was confused because I didn't know how much he understood versus how much I understood, because at times I found out, oh, I knew more about this than he did because of the trailer. And so it took like a solid 30 minutes at least until he was caught up just from what we knew from the trailer. And so also, based on how the trailer portrayed it, I thought that he was part of the organization that Robert Pattinson ended up being a part of. And he wasn't. He had no idea. Just because he knew what Tenet was doesn't mean he had any idea what the whole inversing and the time traveling thing was about. He had no idea what any of that was. So then he ends up hiring Robert Pattinson to help him. It was like they're going to visit an arms dealer, then they're like, oh, there's radioactive stuff, oh, there's paintings. I'm like, what the hell is this plot? What is it was
really rough to piece together there in the middle.
So you go from that first scene, which was awesome, to the next 30 to 40 minutes, like you said, being bad. I don't want to say awful, but it was bad.
Right.
And then from maybe an hour on, which granted this is a 2.5 hour movie,
right,
it slowly gets better and better and better. Granted, there are brief moments, intermissions, where there's that horrible pacing where you have discussions between him and Pattinson and then him and the old lady, where it's just they're rushing through this this dialogue, this exposition, where I think one of the things that Nolan tried to use and utilize to make the exposition quicker and faster was a lot of cliches where they would repeat stuff, like they said, oh, the grandpa paradox, and then he talks to Pattinson about it, and then he talks to the lady about it and goes, oh, that's the grandpa paradox. I know what that is. And you find out later that his title is the protagonist, but he's having this conversation and he's like, but I'm the protagonist. And you're like, what the when you say that? And then she's like, oh, you're not the only protagonist. And he said, but I am.
Yeah.
So
it went back to that a bunch of times. At least 3 or 4 times they said that.
It was
even ended with that.
Right.
I'm the protagonist.
The last time was the only time that it felt like it kind of worked at all. All the other times was sloppy. And that's why this is one of the sloppiest written Nolan films in my mind. If not the sloppy. Well, okay, I can't say that because the Dark Knight trilogy was sloppy as all hell, but sloppy in different ways.
Yeah.
This one didn't have plot holes or anything like that as far as I could tell. Well, the plot was so convoluted that maybe there were plot holes hidden in there.
I feel like, I was thinking, I'm like, I feel like if we watch this movie enough, we're going to notice, like, not plot holes, but things that just don't make sense to what they're trying to say.
The science was very Inception-y.
Yeah.
Nolan's smart enough to know we're not dumb as an audience, so he didn't hold off on showing us the inverted stuff really long. Like, if a lesser filmmaker had done this, it'd been like, see what I did with this twist. He'd be like, oh, here's a quick one, here's a quick one, here's a quick one. And I appreciated that because he didn't undermine the audience at all with any of that. He did with the exposition though, which was frustrating. But yeah, so it's hard to say if it's less or more sloppy than the Dark Knight trilogy, because the Dark Knight trilogy, as far as plot holes, was extremely sloppy. This one didn't have any major plot holes that I noticed, but the dialogue and the pacing was sloppier in ways that I wasn't used to seeing in a Nolan film. Right. And it was weird because, like, the problems in this movie were ones that I'm not used to seeing from Nolan. Like, if there's a flaw in a Nolan movie, which there are several throughout his catalog, I'm used to them because they're usually the same ones. This one wasn't. This one felt the most different. Like, I mean, I've compared it to Interstellar and different Dunkirk and stuff, but, like, it doesn't really compare to any of them in the style of it, really. No. I mean, he hasn't had a whole lot of action in most of his movies because I think he's aware it's one of his weak areas. Right. But even if you compare it to his other best, which is probably the Dark Knight trilogy, this is leagues ahead of that. The action was actually entertaining, especially when you had stuff with, so as the people are going forward and other people are going backwards through the same 10-minute fight scene at the end, they're having to react to the forwards and the backwards affecting the other people. So, like, this guy's running along and he's going forward, but then a piece of the building going backward from an explosion from the other people lifts him up because there was a piece of building that he steps on that is now traveling back into the building. Yeah. And that was really cool. And you see another person gets killed because they get trapped into a wall that was coming back together, and then for some reason it was really important to knock down this tower, and so the going backwards people are knocking it down, but the going forwards people knock it down both at 5 minutes. So, like, the tower is unexploding and then explodes again, and that was a really cool shot. Yeah,
it was. It almost like went like this, like the bottom went out and the top went this way.
Because the one group shot at the bottom, the other group shot at the top. That was a really cool design.
Yeah. All I kept hearing from anything was how mind-blowing this movie is. It's a mind. Was it though?
Not really.
No.
It's complicated, but it's more complicated because of how garbled the storytelling was than anything. Like, yeah, it was cool to see stuff happening and you go, oh, that's how it is. Like, we were having an ongoing conversation at the whole movie, but the thing is, we found out the majority of it before it actually happened. And not, like, you know, hours before, but, like, when I saw the girl dive off the top, I went, that's her later. Yeah. Right. And that was my first thought. Right. And then when Pattinson took off the mask of what turned out to be Washington, I thought it was Pattinson. Yeah. But still on the right, same idea. Yeah. And so it's like, none of it was, like, super complicated if you're into this kind of movie. Right. And we both are. That's my favorite type of movie. Yeah. And I'm not saying it was a bad version of that movie, but it wasn't a remarkable one either. Right. Like, we just watched Predestination a couple weeks ago. It's a little bit of an older movie. That one was about as good as this. Like, I was getting strong Predestination vibes, actually. I was like, and I gave Predestination a 7.5, so I was like, I feel like I should give this a 7.5 too.
And and there were no big, like, you felt like there should be a big reveal or a big twist or something, and there wasn't. Right? The only kind of twist thing was his motivation that, he has cancer and he's going to die. It wasn't a twist, but it was more of a reveal. Like, and
then the reveal that Washington being the protagonist, was the, the boss that created Tenet. Which was like a big reveal for him, but for us as the audience, we're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, that doesn't impact us at all as the audience. We're just like, fair enough. Right. All right.
But as the actor or as the character, I could see that. But not
right for him. Cool. Like, yeah. Oh my God! Really? I do that? Yeah. But as the audience, we're like, I mean, okay, I hadn't really thought about it, but that makes sense. Yeah. And
even if they didn't say that, wouldn't have changed the thing.
No, it didn't affect. And so, like, the movie's complicated, but it could have been made less complicated by either making it longer, which would have been bad, or making it shorter. Because, like I said, that whole half hour to 40 minutes, whatever that mess was, could have either been made fixed by explaining more of what was happening, or just taking the whole fucker out. It didn't need to be in there. It didn't. You could have gone right from him thinking he was dying by eating the poison to, all right, you're in Tenet now, and here's your partner, Robert Pattinson, go. That could have been how the movie went. Yeah. That's what I thought the movie was going to be like. But instead, you've got a really awkward moment where he meets Pattinson, supposedly. And I'm like, who the hell is Pattinson? Yeah. Why does he know him? Why are they working together?
Yeah, because out of the blue, he just, like, meets the guy.
They just walk into a hotel and sit down. Like, they come from different sides of the pillar and sit down. And Pattinson's being drunk. And you're like, what the? Yeah. Who is this guy?
Yeah, that came out of nowhere. But let's say it's something, like, good. So, that's good. Because we see like we're like just really shitting. It's not nearly as bad as we're making. We're just really nitpicking.
This is why. So when I give a review, listen to the number rating I give it, not to what I say. Yeah. 7.5.
So one of my particular favorite scenes was when they had Washington and they're holding him down, and on the other side of the glass, he's seeing the past. So he's got. I thought that was really cool. Yes. I thought that was really cool. That's probably my favorite scene that I can like.
Any
remember.
Action sequence. Yeah. Every action sequence was entertaining. Every moment where, and this is well done because this can get tedious, especially how many times they did, but any moment in the movie where he was going inverted and interacting, making something that we'd already seen happen, all of that was entertaining, which is very hard to do. So props to Nolan for making that entertaining because it's very easy to make that boring because you've already seen the scene and you're like, oh, I already figured out that that's how it happened. Like I said, him bouncing the briefcase off the car. We figured that out before it happened, that was him, which, I mean, not that it was complicated, but you see him get in the car and you're like, oh, duh. And then... and so that could be boring, but he did it in a way that it wasn't boring. So props to him for doing that because that can be very hard. And so there's a lot of that's entertaining. There's a lot of action sequences that are entertaining. As much as the dialogue was wishy-washy, when it was good, it was entertaining. Right. Like, you've got this great conversation between Kenneth Branagh and Washington at dinner where Branagh is threatening him and he's like, I'm going to slit your throat, but not across the side. I'm going to do it upwards, and then I'm going to take your testicles and cut them off and stuff them in your throat. And I was just like, I have never heard shit like that in a Nolan movie. That was great. They also used the first F-bomb since Insomnia in a Nolan film.
Really? The comedy did work for me, though, even though
most of it, yeah.
That line with that's funny. And then later he threatens to kill him again. He's like, no balls in the throat this time.
See, here's a 50-50 moment, because so near the end when Washington's having his mind blown and realizing that, well, Pattinson's going back to kill himself, sacrifice himself, not just kill himself, and then he's like, oh, but you can't do that. It was a really cool moment because then Pattinson's like, this isn't, just the beginning, this is the end of a long, fun relationship, if you ask me. Which I enjoyed that line, I enjoyed that idea, but at the same time, I never felt the connection before that between them. No, maybe I missed it, but it didn't feel like they were great buddies before that. Yeah. So Washington being like teary-eyed, I mean, I get it. He's offering to kill himself for you to win, but like, it felt like it came out of nowhere, but at the same time, it kind of worked. So that's why it's like a 50-50 moment where I'm like, I liked it, but then I'm questioning why they even had that moment. Maybe well, at least for Pattinson it makes sense because they've been friends for years now. But for Washington, he doesn't know him yet, really.
It's almost like the relationship seems so random that you felt that Neil would just eventually die and be gone halfway through the movie or something. Or
he didn't feel important, and so at a certain point, they introduce Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, and for that brief moment there, he felt like he replaced Pattinson. Like, you kind of forget Pattinson's there until Pattinson comes back.
Yeah, he's missing for a little
and then
bit.
he's just like, hey, I'm back, and I'm saving the day, and you're like, oh, I kind of liked Aaron Taylor Johnson better, I'm not gonna lie. Honestly, actually, Taylor Johnson was probably my second favorite actor in this movie, and he only had a small part, but when he was there, I was like, I'm enjoying this. Going back to the complaints about the actors they chose to be this, just imagine if, like, instead of Pattinson, it was like Jake Gyllenhaal or somebody. Imagine how much more entertaining that was. Or instead of Washington, Lakeith Stanfield or Daniel Kaluuya or one of those guys, somebody that is more up and coming or more prominent actor than Washington. I guess Washington wasn't bad and neither was Pattinson, but imagine having, like I said, specifically Jake Gyllenhaal in that role. I would have been enamored by him. It would have been much easier to get attached to that character because he's a better actor and more just fitting for that type of role. Am I right? Like,
I feel I was hoping, because I never heard Washington as an actor, so he might have been in something I'm not familiar with him. I was hoping this was a breakout role for him. I was hoping this would be like, oh my god, because I trust Nolan's decisions. Usually. And so if he's putting you in a movie,
he casted Harry Styles and he wasn't awful.
So all his cast, I mean, he was in the book. It was a producer on the book, Eli,
and he was in Black Klansman. He was the main character in that. I haven't seen that. Washington wasn't bad.
Nobody was bad per se. It's just
take it or leave it.
There's this level of like excellence that you expect out of Nolan movies, and it didn't reach that.
And when it becomes more about the technical aspects of filmmaking rather than the plot, that's when you realize you just don't care. And I was noticing, like, when they go and they meet the Mahir character, I noticed that he's sitting on a bench and then the camera's rotating around them, and I'm like, oh, they moved that bench quickly out of the way so that it could rotate around like that. I'm like, that was cool. But I'm thinking about that instead of the plot.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the plot, I didn't even know what was, I mean, they were obviously talking about they were going to crash the plane. They're like, we need this guy, which was really cool, by the way. That scene, the plane driving over the cars and stuff, and the fact that you know that's real is just like, that's cool. But I forgot to mention this earlier. The CGI, although rare, when it's there, is god awful. Like, it looked so bad. Like, I saw it in the trailer. I did a trailer reaction. I forget if I still have it up or not. But in the first trailer, they show the car tumbling and then coming back up. And I remember seeing that in the trailer and going, that looks horrible. I hope they fix that by the time the movie comes out. No, they didn't. No. And it makes sense why they wouldn't. And that's essentially what I said in my reaction. I was like, I hope they're going to fix it, but they're not. Probably because they wouldn't put it in the trailer if it wasn't done. And it looked bad. And there was a couple other CGI. There was CGI background, like when they first go to, what is it, India, somewhere in India, to meet the arms dealer. They're walking in front of like there's a plane and somebody's crossing in front of a CGI background, and it's just bad. And Nolan doesn't use CGI that much. No. And so when it's there, it's noticeable, and it was just disappointing. Because like Interstellar is one of the movies I look to that proves that Nolan knows how to and when to use visual effects. Because he doesn't use CGI much, but in Interstellar he had to use some, and it looked amazing. This one, it didn't. It looked like run-of-the-mill, average, beginning of July movie CGI garbage.
No, it is sad to say, probably my favorite thing of the whole movie is the score. I thought the score was fantastic, especially the opening song.
Score was very good. I still don't know if the score is my favorite thing or the action, because I really like the action, and then also just the idea. Because Nolan's, I mean, I love his mind. I love his ideas he comes up with, but normally he comes up with a better plot for the idea than he did this time.
Well, like the score to me, especially, like they went very bass heavy. Very bass heavy, and you could feel it in your chest. So like when the action scenes were happening, I think it intensified it a bit because you felt like that right in the chest. It almost gave you that like anxiety, like, oh wow. which I really enjoyed. And then it just was layered really well.
Yeah.
Doesn't he usually work with Hans Zimmer, but he didn't this time, right? Is that who he usually works?
Did he not? Ludwig Göransson.
Yeah.
Which I was actually gonna say. I know you just said how much you love the score. I was gonna say it felt less memorable than most Nolan movies, which
maybe it just stood out more because it was like so. It was really bass driven.
You're also just not used to seeing movies in theaters.
Yeah. Well, also this is also my only second Nolan movie in theaters.
Yeah, he normally uses Hans Zimmer.
Okay, yeah.
When I think Nolan scores, though, like the immediate thought is like Interstellar,
right,
where you've got that amazing soundtrack. The whole soundtrack is amazing, and I'm like, I will listen to that while driving around in the car.
Right.
I don't need to watch the movie to listen to the music. I don't know that I would do that with this, and I liked it. And I liked how it was integrated into the movie. It was integrated into the movie great. I don't know that the soundtrack for me will ever escape the movie from me. I think it will stay as part of the movie and work really well in it.
Yeah, it was
but I don't know that I would take it out. But that is a big part of all of Nolan's movies. Is well, not all of, but ever since probably Batman Begins moving forward, his scores are extremely important in his movies, and seem to get more so every movie, and this is no different.
I just want to see it again. I really want to see it again so I can like feel it out more. I've seen it now. I won't be so distracted looking for Easter egg things. I can focus more on.
Yeah, and I think that is something you and I both struggle with, is being in the moment watching a movie for the first time, because I find I have to, in my mind at least, live up to the reputation of I'm the guy that's going to figure out the movie.
Right.
And so I'm trying so hard to do that instead of just sitting there watching the movie. And so I think now that there's nothing to figure out about the movie, I may be able to just sit back and enjoy it a little bit more. And hopefully it can get up back into the 8s. I would like this not to be, strike 2, because Dunkirk was a weaker Nolan film, but it wasn't bad.
Right.
And this one isn't bad either. I don't know. Everybody, me included, is just waiting for another Inception. Yeah. And I just hope he doesn't become like, God forbid, a Tim Burton, where his whole career is now trying to do that again. Yeah, and I hope he can just keep doing whatever he wants to do and not worry about it, which is the impression I have gotten up until this point, because like Dunkirk, nobody wanted or expected him to do something like Dunkirk, so it seems like he's, got everything under control. I hope.
Yeah. I think he does. I mean, every director has some ups and downs. I mean, Tarantino's one of my favorites. He had that little drought in the middle with the Kill Bills and Death Proof. Yeah. Even Jackie Brown. Yeah. But but he came back strong.
This is no Kill Bill.
No.
This is no Death Proof.
No.
It's just not Inglourious Bastards or Pulp Fiction either.
Exactly. So everyone can have their ups and downs.
Yeah, this is a Jackie Brown. We can call this a Jackie Brown.
As of right now, first thought Jackie Brown.
First thought's Jackie Brown, where it was fine, but it didn't quite live up to the expectation, and kind of honestly felt not normal for Nolan.
Right.
While at the same time being exactly like Nolan with the whole hair clip. Anyway, so I think that wraps it up. That's what we thought about it. Once again, we don't hate it. So even though we spent this whole time criticizing it, it's because there's been this bar that Nolan has set for himself, because he is the best filmmaker alive.
Yes.
He is. And so when he's not perfect, you notice. Yeah. And so a 7.5 to an 8.5 movie. We'll come back to it. I'm sure I'll give it on second thought months down the road, maybe next year even. But yeah, so that's what we thought. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've seen it, let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it. And if you haven't, why are you still watching? Bye. Tenet. Yes. Oh, I thought that one part actually was really funny when Brana is testing him, which is, thank God they actually did something, because she says it will open all the right doors and some of the wrong doors, and the only reference to that is then he tries to trick him into saying the thing back to him or whatever, and he says, we live in a Twilight world. And then Washington's like, oh, that's nice poetry. That was good. Yeah.